"Okay," she said, smiling. There was something about her mouth that turned me on. I wanted to lick her snaggletooth. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I am back with another video, and today we're going to be doing my reading wrap up for the month of October. Now before you ask, yes, I was supposed to participate in the October readathon. Did it go well? No. TBRs are not my thing. I am beginning to really realize that I kind of just read what I want and I kind of go with the flow of the month, and the books, I let the books pick me. Okay, so I did get through a few spooky books and didn't get through one, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I'm not going to hold this video up anymore. Make sure you press that like button, press that subscribe button, drop some in the comment section below. What did you read during the month of October? What are you reading now? And let's get right into my reading wrap up for the month of October 2020. I think that this month was good for me. I got through 6 total books. I started a 7th, but I unfortunately had to DNF that book because it was awful. But let's get into this. I'm going to start with the last thing that I read and then go back to the beginning of this month. So the last book that I read in the month of October was Carved in Bone by Michael Nava. And Michael Nava, this is the first time that I have ever read a novel by him. And Michael Nava is a Mexican-American author, and he writes mysteries. And Carved in Bone is a novel in the Henry Rios series. I did not read the first book in this series. Apparently, Carved in Bone is the first book from the series that Michael Nava has released in 20 years. So one thing about this novel that I think that everybody should go into it thinking or knowing is that it takes place in the 80s in San Francisco, and some of the language is very of the time. We know that, queer language and acceptable terms for a lot of different things have changed over time. And so you definitely get a few slurs here and there. It's definitely not updated language. So go into it kind of knowing that. But it didn't bother me too much. A few of the things I did have a few issues with, but let's actually get into what this book is about. So 1984 in San Francisco, we get Henry Rios. He is a gay criminal defense attorney, and he is also a recovering alcoholic. And so he had his professional relationships got very messed up. He needed money, and so he decided to take a job working as a claims investigator for an insurance company. The first case that he decided to take on was the mysterious death of a man named Billy Ryan. And so this takes us back to 1971 when Billy Ryan's father stumbles upon him in a very compromising position with his best friend. After basically being beat half to death, Billy is sent away with nothing but a small envelope filled with $200 and a suitcase. And this lands him in San Francisco. What I felt like Michael Nava did really well with this story was weaving in characters from the past with Billy Ryan into the present with Henry Rios. We see these recollections of the early years of the AIDS crisis, fear, the pain of watching your chosen family and friends dying with little to no explanation, but most of all, like this sort of will for people at that time to just continue living and loving through this crisis that really most Americans were completely ignoring, blaming queer people for bringing this on themselves, and just having to deal with all of this death surrounding them while continuing to live. So I definitely think that Carved in Bone could have been a longer book, but I thoroughly enjoyed what was at the core of this. And so I definitely would recommend it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. Prior to reading Carved in Bone, I read this sort of new-ish release. I think it came out over the summer The Black Flamingo by Atta. This is a novel that is written in verse, and it tells the story of a young, mixed Black and Greek teenager, sort of like his journey into coming into his identity and understanding who he is as a person. And it all leads up to him going to university and discovering this personality, this persona that he takes on, called the Black Flamingo, a drag performer, and his experiences entering into the world of drag. I enjoyed this for the most part. It is written in verse, it's a very quick read, it's very easy to get through. It is a YA novel. But where I sort of think that the Black Flamingo lacked was the depth. I felt like it was very surface level. I felt like it was very surface level at certain points, and the way that it kind of skimmed over a lot of the issues that many of us had a lot of questions about, and kind of just had to make draw our own conclusions from it. And prior to reading this, in terms of reading novels in verse that I had experienced, I read The Poet X, I think last month. It was either last month or the month before. And The Poet X it had so much depth to it. It was very mature. You didn't feel like you were reading like a YA novel. And this was cute for what it was, but, you know, in talking about his sexuality and talking about his struggles with identity in terms of his race, I felt like it just kind of, it relied on a few stereotypes, honestly. Discussions of race were kind of like we've seen it before. Like at one point, him and his uncle are in the car and he gets stopped by the cops, and we get like this sort of like monologue from his uncle about the way that Black men are treated in society. But it didn't go much deeper than that. Like, he's supposed to have this very deep relationship with his uncle, but we don't really see them having many conversations. Like, his uncle is just kind of just there. His mother is a very iffy character. Can't draw, like, concrete conclusions about because you don't know enough. He has, like, these friends that sort of come in and out. Some characters just completely drop off without being mentioned ever again. I just wish that there was a bit more to this. So for the fact that it's YA, I kind of wanted to reach to give it more of like a 4 out of 5 because I think that the topics that it talks about are very important. But at the same time, if I have to think about it as an actual book, like just a book that I would read, I would have to give it like a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's not bad, but it definitely just needs more. It needed a little bit more working through compared to other YA novels that I've seen that have handled very sensitive, intense topics a lot better. And maybe the reason that I was being very harsh on that novel is that prior to that, I finally got to reading In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. It's a memoir that deals with queer intimate partner violence. Violence does not come in like direct hits to the face, black eyes, or visible bruises. Who Carmen Maria Machado refers to as the woman in the dream house inflicts abuse through slowly whittling away at Machado's self-esteem, forcing her to attack and doubt herself, and Machado continues to come back. So in this, the cycle of abuse is very real. She kind of shows how it is extremely present in queer relationships. She gorgeously and very painfully writes this story. And while she's recalling these events, she uses all of these folkloric archetypes. She incorporates history and pop culture. And she not only critiques the way that society treats and views queer relationships, but how often queer folks fail each other. I felt like this narration style was distinctive. It was engrossing and it was very heart-wrenching. And so I desperately just wanted everything to be wrapped up so tightly and nicely at the end of this. But honestly, just knowing that Carmen Maria Machado was able to escape this dream house was enough. And I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. 10 out of 10 would recommend. So definitely check out In the Dream House if you haven't already. Prior to reading In the Dream House, I read another amazing memoir that I also did a full review of on this channel. I read Heavy by Kiese, Laymon, and I did a full review right here. So definitely go check that out. I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars also. This really was an amazing month of reading and also watching TV. So I had been tuning in every single week on Sunday nights to Lovecraft Country on HBO. And so I felt like I had to read the novel. A couple of my favorite YouTubers are a part of the Black Future Book Club, and they were doing a live show the week after the finale of the television show. So I was like, I need to finish this before I watch the final episode of the show, and I also need to read this before their live show. So I think I finished this literally on Saturday night before the final episode of Lovecraft Country. I would definitely recommend that you checked out my full review of Lovecraft Country right here on my channel to hear my thoughts. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars, so check out the video to find out what I liked, what I disliked with Lovecraft Country. So prior to that, I actually finally listened to an audiobook. And so I talked in one of my previous videos about the fact that I really do not enjoy audiobooks and that I would be trying to get into some audiobooks. And I finally did, like literally right after I posted that video. I started listening to Such a Fun Age by Kiley Reid on audiobook. Now, when I first heard about Such a Fun Age, there was so much drama, so much stuff going on. It all kind of began with all of that like intense YouTube drama about certain people saying that they were unable to finish the book, or certain people that did not finish the book. There was just so much intense conversation about it, and people had like very, very intense critical opinions of Such a Fun Age by Kiley Reid. But I honestly ended up absolutely loving Such a Fun Age by Kiley Reid. This was a fantastic audiobook listen. What made this book so great was the fact that it was so normal. It was just like, it was a soap opera. It was a very, very hilarious, intense, entertaining soap opera. It really was not like this super brutal snapshot of like another case of police brutality. And it really wasn't even like super intense in its conversation about racism and privilege. You definitely got that from the story, but it wasn't like banging you over the head with it. Even though the incident with our main character, Amira, and the police officer that she comes, not even police officer, the security officer at this grocery store that she comes in contact with while she is babysitting her boss, Alix's young child. A bulk of this novel really is about self-discovery and this sort of pressure for Amira to choose a career and excel in it. And sort of like this discussion about there's really nothing wrong with kind of not knowing what you want to do and just wanting to be normal. I think that in the constant conversation about like Black excellence, people are very like, there's this high level of pressure to just excel in everything you do. And people just really have like this sort of problem with just people wanting to just be normal and just to live their life and to just make their money, go home, chill, you know, not always having to be what a lot of people define as excellent. And this novel is also really genius in the way that it builds its white characters. We get Alix and we get Kelly, who, if you read this, Kelly is insufferable. And Kelly and Alix aren't extreme. They aren't blatantly racist. They aren't like donning MAGA hats and tiki torches. But overall, the microaggressions are still there. And essentially, they are both the same brand of white savior. They're both extremely oblivious to their own privilege and their white liberalism. Just really refuse to see the flaws in any of their actions. Such a Fun Age is honestly endless entertainment. It's thoughtful commentary, and I really would recommend the audiobook. It pairs very well with a glass of wine, cooking, driving, doing housework, anything. Okay, I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. Like, it was absolutely wonderful. Now that's the audiobook. I don't know what's going on with the physical copy, if, you know, the words are spaced out too much, if people are feeling some type of way about the font. but I listened to the audiobook, so I definitely would recommend this. 5 out of 5 stars for Such a Fun Age by Kiley, Reid. Now, the book that I DNF'd was The Swallows by Lisa Lutz. I couldn't stand this book. It was awful. So really what The Swallows is about is this woman, Alexandra Witt. She comes to this private academy and begins teaching there. And so there's supposed to be like this mystery behind why she left her last school, and she ended up like going to like the middle of nowhere and meditating for a while, which is what you can do when you are white and wealthy. And so at this school, when she begins teaching there, she knows that something is like amiss. And when she what the first red flag should have been, that this was gonna be some mess, was the fact that as soon as she moves to the school, she doesn't want to live in the faculty housing. She wants to live in a cabin with barely any electricity in the middle of the woods. The cabin doesn't have a bathroom. It doesn't have a shower. And she was like, yeah, I don't want to live here. I want to live in this random cabin that everybody is telling me is not a sustainable place to live. As the book goes on, we discover that there's like this like misogynistic, all-male sort of like society at the school where they have like this secret like message board where they rate girls after they sleep with them. But there are like these girls that are trying to like fight back against this. And my problem wasn't the plot. My problem was how it was written. It was just like disgusting. Like, why? Like, why did you choose to say some of the things that you said in this? So at the beginning, you get this guy, and his name is Mr. Ford. While she's making coffee in the teacher's lounge, he just says, his dialogue is just him saying like creepy shit. The first time I saw Alex Witt, I thought she was a student out of uniform. I would have paid good money to see her in a uniform. I tried to get her off topic. She seemed easily distracted. I like that in a woman. The final straw for me was on page 22. I'm talking page 22. Okay, she said, smiling. There was something about her mouth that turned me on. I wanted to lick her snaggletooth. What? And so I had to DNF that book. I tried listening to it on audiobook too. I gave it 2 chances. It just wasn't it. And then going all the way back to the beginning of this month, I was blessed to begin this month reading another work of Toni Morrison. I read Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison. Sulla, Jazz, and now Song of Solomon. My 2020, as much of a mess as it has been blessed by Toni Morrison's words. And I think I really just needed that for myself. This book includes a group of Black assassins. They're avenging the racist murders of Black people. A winemaking woman with no belly button who has an earring hanging from her ear that contains her name and a bag of bones hanging from her ceiling. So overall, Song of Solomon is this very complex, very riveting, almost spiritual piece reflecting on the power of the Black oral tradition. So overall, I really cannot ever say that I haven't been struck completely speechless by the words of Toni Morrison whenever I pick up one of her books. And this is no exception to that rule. I absolutely loved this, and my journey reading everything that Toni Morrison has written is definitely not over. So that was definitely an amazing start to my month. So those are the 7 books that I read, 1 that I did not finish, from this month. I hope you enjoyed my reading wrap up for the month of October 2020. Make sure you like this video, make sure you drop something in the comment section below, and make sure you press that subscribe button if you haven't already. And always remember that you are loved.